They're man's best friend, but in recent years, incidents of severe, even fatal dog attacks have raised alarm. There are laws to address dangerous dogs, but are owners held responsible when dogs attack? Critics say no and are pushing for stronger punishment. But is the law clear enough to determine what makes a dog dangerous and what makes a dog owner truly negligent? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. Deadly dog attacks. It may sound like Stephen King's Cujo, but for many residents on Hawaii Island, it's a huge concern. Last year, a 71-year-old man died after police say 4 dogs attacked him while he was walking in Hawaiian Ocean View Estates. In 2021, an 85-year-old woman died after being attacked by dogs in Hawaiian Paradise Park. So what is being done to curb this dangerous dog problem, and are dog owners being held responsible? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. Now to our guests in studio. Chris Todd is the representative for parts of Hilo, Curtistown, and Kea'au. He graduated from the University of Hawaii at Hilo with a bachelor's degree in economics and political science. He has served in the state legislature since 2017. Matthew Reynolds is the administrator of Hawaii County's Animal Control and Protection Agency. He has over 25 years of experience working with animals ranging from domestic pets to zoo animals. Prior to taking the job last September, he worked in the veterinary department at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida. Ashley Kirkowicz is a member of the Hawaii County Council. Born and raised on Hawaii Island, she has represented Puna at the council since 2018. She introduced an ordinance aimed at addressing dangerous dog attacks. You know, these dog attacks, they're not unheard of. Fortunately, they're not super common, but of course not unheard of. You know, there seems to be a number of serious and even fatal dog attacks that have happened, specifically on the Big Island. Chris, I'll start with you. Why do you think this is a Hawaii Island issue?
Yeah, I think to your point, it's definitely a statewide issue, but I think the rural nature of much of the Big Island, the fact that we have so much land mass with only about 200,000 people, but also our lot sizes are much larger, particularly in the Puna area where 1 to 3 acre lots are very normal, whereas on Oahu and much of the state that's much more uncommon. So I think a combination of that, a strong hunting culture means more dogs with more land to roam, and a lot of these areas are not necessarily fenced in. So I think it just kind of creates a natural situation where you're going to run into more of these.
Ashley, you're on Hawaii County Council from Puna. Anything you would add to that? Why do you think this is a problem on the Big Island?
No, I mean, I absolutely couple everything that, Chris has said. I actually live in Hawaiian Paradise Park, where the kupuna that you mentioned, Dolores Oskins, was tragically mauled to death by dogs in that community. And so there's certainly a situation where, folks have animals because they're part of their family, they're pets, but there's also this sense of, because we are out in such a rural community, they are also seen as guardians, as protectors, if you may, of our families and of our property.
Do both of you hear from your constituents often about this being an issue that they're really concerned about?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I introduced an ordinance 6 months after Dolores passed away, because there was a long-standing community cry for, we need to do something about these vicious dog attacks. There needs to be some kind of criminal penalty, because what we had on our books was simply a petty misdemeanor. And so we worked really, really hard to mobilize folks that were attacked by dogs themselves, lost loved ones, worked very hard with our prosecuting attorney, police, corporation counsel, to enact that ordinance, where we now have on the books, in the event of a serious injury or death, B and C penalties. And we hoped and prayed that we would never have to use the ordinance, but unfortunately another individual was attacked last year in Ocean View, and that's when we found out that, hey, we actually don't have the authority to do this, but thankfully we're coming up on a legislative session, and so let's work with our state legislators to allow the counties to have this authority.
Matthew, how often is animal control called out, and are there certain problem areas that you all are aware of?
I mean, we're called out probably at least once a day for a problem with a dog, whether it's a stray or an aggressive dog. And most of the time those are police assists that were assisting them with a dangerous dog call. You know, and although there are problem areas within the county, there is a problem just about in every neighborhood. You know, you have those individuals that may have dogs on their property that they're not necessarily managing well, that may cause a nuisance within the community. You know, and sometimes if those dogs are allowed to run free for long enough, they start to see the community as their territory. You know, and so if those dogs aren't controlled properly, then they will attack anything that roams within their area. You know, dogs are territorial, and the more you allow them to see their territory as something large instead of confined to their individual properties, then you're just giving them an opportunity to do something that they can't necessarily undo.
Yeah.
So,
you know, the animal control job itself is very dangerous for the men and women that go out there. Can you give our viewers kind of a picture of that? I know you came on board the job after those fatal incidents, but maybe what was some of the most dangerous calls you've been out on, or your team has been out on, that you've seen since you started?
I mean, we've had dangerous dogs we've had to take out of cars. You know, individual lots and stuff that are just loaded with dogs that are not managed. You know, some of the lots within our community don't necessarily have houses on them, but they have dogs kept on the lots for protection of the lots. And so, you know, with no socialization for those dogs and no interaction with humans other than the ones that they're interacting with that come on the property, then, you know, those kind of dogs are particularly dangerous because, you know, they don't see humans as something to be interacted with well. So.
Does your team prepare in any special way when you know you're going out to, let's say, a property that doesn't have a home on it, or you know the owners aren't living there, but there's dogs on the property?
I mean, our guys, you know, our workers prepare for every single call the same. We have the tools. We go out with worst case scenario in mind, just because, you know, you may get a call for something that may seem very benign. But ultimately, it may turn into something completely different. You know, you may encounter things that were not necessarily on the call, and so our guys go out with the worst in mind, hoping for the best.
Chris, can you tell us what is the legal definition of a dangerous dog, and then what would make an owner negligent by law?
It's something we're working on. So there is pending legislation that was introduced this year. Kind of a combination of legislators and community members, some of whom were personally impacted with the loss of a family member. We have a piece of legislation introduced by Representative Ilagan, who represents the Pune area, and that's HB 2058, and it would create that definition in statute. It would set up a process for designating dogs as dangerous dogs. It would require certain things to trigger that designation. And then that second part of the bill would deal with if you have a dog that is designated as a dangerous dog, what are the requirements placed on the owner? Ensuring that it's properly kept, that it's not just roaming free after receiving that designation. And then the third part of the legislation would set up potential penalties if that is not followed, and also if that dog, after being designated, were to harm a person, or another animal.
Ashley, in 2022, Hawaii County Council passed an ordinance that makes it a felony crime if someone fails to take reasonable measures to prevent an unprovoked dog attack that results in serious injury or death. Under this law, the dog's owner could face up to 10 years in jail, but there's something that stops this from being enforced. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, we don't have the authority, and it was a really huge blow to the gut when we found out, because we had 4 lawyers on this: our corporation counsel, a deputy that represents police, someone in our legislative review branch, and our prosecuting attorney. 4 folks didn't catch this, and so it was very unfortunate, but the community saw that we were trying. When we looked at statute, it allows us to prescribe up to a misdemeanor. So felony is beyond our authority to do. But again, with this legislation that it's moving through session now, it's very promising that we have this authority. In my review of the bill, it would only grant us the ability to assign a C felony, I believe. And our ordinance actually goes to a B felony for serious injury or death. Yeah.
You know, I know the three of you are here tonight from the Big Island. Chris, as you said earlier at the start of this, this is not just a Big Island issue. I can think of just, you know, over the last year here on Oahu, 2 serious dog attacks that happened in Ewa Beach specifically. Matthew, what can our viewers do? God forbid they're ever in that situation where a dangerous dog is approaching them or attacking them. How can they protect themselves?
I mean, I always tell people that, you know, don't assume a dog is nice. You know, never approach a dog that you aren't familiar with. It's, you know, there's really no telling what the behavior is, and a lot of people can't necessarily read the dog behavior very well. And so, you know, if they assume that the dog is nice and just walk up on it, it may be already showing signs of aggression. You just might not be able to read it. So I always steer people in the way of, you know, avoid dogs if you can. You know, in our area, we have people that will take walking sticks with them, items to make sure that they, you know, if they do happen upon an animal that is aggressive, that they have something to protect themselves. You know, and it's up to that person to defend themselves, you know, with all means if necessary. But I always tell people to try to avoid them.
Can I just say that I hate the fact that you have to say, do whatever you must in order to protect yourself. Like people tell me that they walk around with bats or pepper spray or a taser because they feel like walking their neighborhood is like walking a gauntlet. And it shouldn't be that way. Everyone should feel safe walking through the street. Like my kids bike on the road, and I feel completely safe because I feel like everybody on our street is a responsible dog owner. And I wish everybody was the same.
Well, you may think that everybody is a responsible dog owner, but you know, there's always almost one person on that street that probably isn't necessarily the best dog owner. You know, and so, you know, those are the nuisance dogs, the ones that we get the calls about. And you know, it ultimately is sometimes something that you have to encounter on your street, you know. Having a neighbor that you have to deal with that has an animal like that can cause a big disruption within the community. So,
if you have a neighbor where you think there's a dangerous dog on that property, what can people do? And then can you tell us the steps that, you know, happens next? You know, does police get involved? Does the Humane Society come in? You know, when does animal control step in?
I mean, with our county, most of the dangerous dog calls go through the police first. For our animals that are dangerous and are reported to the police department, you know, it's up to the police to identify whether or not those dogs need to be confiscated or removed from the area. But ultimately, you know, as animal control officers, the most that we can do is cite somebody for a problem with an animal. So police involvement is key to getting those animals that are aggressive and a nuisance within the community off the streets. If we can catch them straying, though, then we can take them immediately.
And I want to chime in here because I have a constituent who has for a number of years done the right thing, called, filed the police reports, only to go through this judicial process, and the neighbor is having to pay a $25 fine. And there's really no accountability. We have people that are living in fear, prisoners in their own home. They're having to barricade themselves in their home because they're so afraid of what their neighbors' animals are going to do to them. And that's really no way to live. And I think to Chris's point about the law just being unclear on what makes an animal dangerous, and also having, you know, our police officers and animal control officers, they need to be trained up in what to look for in a dangerous animal, and also be equipped to be able to confiscate the animal. And then there's a whole can of worms around, if we're going to be confiscating animals, where are we going to put them? Do we have enough facilities and resources to care for, rehabilitate these animals?
Yeah. I mean, currently we don't have the proper facilities for that, which we are working towards.
Right. As you can see, I've got a lot of pink papers here. I want to get to some of the viewer questions. Chris, you kind of touched on this. This is Koa emailing in from Manoa asking, first quick comment. Perhaps we do not have fatal dog attacks, but we still have a problem with aggressive dogs on Oahu. Like I said, 2 recent terrible incidents of dog attacks in last year in Ewa Beach. Is there currently statewide legislation in process to address this issue?
I believe the current bill would address this, and then the question would be down the road, if this bill is to pass, what are we overlooking with the current legislation, right? Because it's not possible to pass a perfect piece of legislation, period, but also in your first attempt. So there's going to be times where if we pass this, we find a case where this doesn't quite apply and we can't quite prevent a negative outcome. So our hope is to really craft the best bill possible, and I think we're approaching something pretty good here. And we're kind of entering the last phase of entering conference committee within the next couple of weeks to actually iron out some of those fine details. But the current bill would basically, to get that designation of being a dangerous dog, it can be designated like we need, witness testimony, or it can be witnessed by an officer. They can make that designation. But really what we're talking about is a dog that's kind of already harmed, right? Already caused harm. And I think that's the difficulty, is we don't want this to be a process that could just be weaponized by a neighbor who doesn't like someone's dog, right? It's a fine line, and it's going to take us some time to really work out some of those details. But I do think that the current legislation would at least begin to set up that process where if we know a dog is dangerous, if they've already been unprovoked initiating violent acts on people or on animals, if they're actively engaged in really terrifying a neighborhood, we can provide that designation, let the dog owner know these are the series of requirements that must take place. If it's going to be indoors, you can't just leave it with a minor, as an example, if it has this designation. If it's outdoors, it has to be kenneled or it has to be leashed. If you're walking it, it has to be leashed. Real basic things here. But we can't be perfect. So this is our first attempt, and I'm hoping we can get it as right as possible.
Chris, you forgot the sign. There's also supposed to be
you
sign
gotta put a sign up
posted
too.
that says that this dog has been deemed dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's actually a few years that it has that designation until it's been proven otherwise to the Animal Control Agency.
Am I understanding it correctly that dog would have had to, in theory, attack another person to be deemed dangerous?
Some of that is still up for negotiation. So the language is still being worked on, right? So what we're going to find out in the next couple of weeks is what final language comes out of conference. But the language as it kind of currently sits in the House, it actually just underwent some amendments in the Judiciary Committee. That's basically the nuts and bolts of how it works.
And a follow-up question from John in Kea'au is asking, if dogs come on property and kills animals on that property, now we're switching gears talking about other animals being injured or killed, what rights does the owner have?
So I can touch on that. In my reviewing of the code, there is actually a section about slaying dangerous dogs. And so if a dangerous dog has entered your property and has caused harm to your livestock, you as the owner or the owner's agent have the ability to take necessary precautions to protect your livestock. That is in our county code.
Matthew, this question's for you. Kind of a follow-up to what you were talking about earlier about doing whatever means necessary to protect yourself. Maybe if you could speak to more specific self-defense tips. Jada emailed in asking, what should people do if they are attacked by a dog? My opinion is that it is never the dog's fault. Ultimately, the responsibility and liability will fall on the owner.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the dogs don't start off as aggressive, Dogs take time to be trained and not trained to exhibit the proper behavior to be in our society. There are obedience classes, there are things that owners can choose to do that, unfortunately, if they don't choose to do those things, those animals can very easily become antisocial, exhibit aggression, and so those dogs that haven't been socialized properly are probably the ones that they will encounter outside, of somebody's neighborhood or something.
Is it ever an issue of that nature versus nurture, or would you say it's always, how the dogs are raised that makes them aggressive?
It's a little bit. I would say more on the lines of how they're raised and how they're trained. A dog exhibits little signs growing up, from a puppy all the way up to adulthood, that we as owners, it's our job to correct them from those negative behaviors. It's just the same as kids or anything else. If a kid does a bad behavior, you want to make sure you correct those behaviors. But if you don't do that with dogs, they will continue down that road to where hand biting is a playful thing for a puppy. But if you let it go long enough, it becomes more aggressive, to the point that they start to bite people. And so without proper correction and proper ownership of those dogs, then you end up with an aggressive dog.
It's unfortunate. I think most people who own dogs treat them like pets and like family members. Obviously, as we're discussing tonight, there are the owners that are unresponsible, not responsible. The three of you, this is a question for all of you. What do you think needs to be done to educate dog owners about responsible ownership?
There needs to be a lot more education and awareness around the kinds of laws that we have in place. There's also a lot of, I think, crafting of legislation, definitions that needs to happen on the county and state side. But really, it comes down to education. And I'd really like to explore how we get free clinics for obedience training, registering dogs, microchipping them, having those clinics out in the community. That is something that I think a lot of folks don't actually know on our island, that you have to register your dog. People say, oh, it's so expensive. No, it's not. It's $2 or $6, and you pay that every 2 years. And so I think if we get into this habit of continuously educating our community, getting into the schools, making sure that our kids know what it means to be a responsible, nurturing pet owner, I think we're going to making a lot of strides.
Yeah, I feel, starting from the point that a person gets the dog, that owner is as much responsible for the behavior of that dog from the point that they own it for the rest of that dog's life. 14 years, 13 years of a dog's life, you're responsible for that dog's behavior. And so we have to educate people on what the proper behavior is of dogs and how to get them trained properly. And it does come down to a little bit of finance, because some of those classes are not inexpensive. And free clinics for behavior training would be ideal to get people out there to start training their dogs properly. And it also comes down to a matter of the mentality. You want to treat your dog as a member of the family, and like you said, there are a certain number of people that treat them as a piece of property. And that's not necessarily to say that, for instance, a hunting dog can't be a member of the family as well, or treated, and with respect to their behavior and trained properly. Many hunting dogs are, in fact, very well-trained animals. And so it's, it's a matter of the owner creating an environment for those animals to behave properly.
Yeah. Bob from Waikiki is asking for you, Matt. Can you give advice on how to handle a dog-to-dog confrontation where one dog is aggressive and the other isn't? How do you keep both dogs safe? Let's say you're walking on the street with your dog.
You don't want to put yourself between the two dogs. Oftentimes people try to separate their dogs by getting between them, and that is, a very big mistake. Dogs don't necessarily bite. They'll bite just basically anything that comes in their area. And so, oftentimes you want to stay away from the two dogs, actually their mouths. And oftentimes people will grab a leg of a dog and drag it away to separate it from the dog that is mostly the non-aggressor.
So picking up from the back
from
legs
the
or front
legs,
rear legs? Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, on that topic, if a dog attacks another dog, what rights does the dog owner have? Is the dog owner responsible for the vet bills? Can police get involved? What happens then?
So what we're trying to do right now, because you have a civil court system, right, where there is recourse if it's caused damage to yourself, medical bills, or damage to a pet, you can always take them to court. What we're really trying to address is the criminal side of things. And to ensure that there are really specific standards, and that people who have lost loved ones or who've lost pets have at least recourse on the criminal side to address these situations, to at least support what's happening within our civil court system. But ideally, this is something that works in tandem, right? Where, let's say that, let's say it's like a dog who's attacked a human, right? And you have, $20,000, $30,000 in medical bills. And in some cases, it can be much more severe than that. You may have civil recourse to file suit. One of the things that the bill does is that it establishes that if you have this dangerous dog designation, in at least the current version of the bill, you would be required to pick up liability insurance. So that in the event that your dog does perpetrate a future attack, that insurance is there, which could potentially make someone whole, in addition to whatever could play out within the civil court system. So right now, there's not a ton you can do outside of the civil court. We're trying to find balance there on the criminal side also.
What if the dog was trying to defend itself or its family? Would that dog owner then be facing any sort of jail time?
No. And it makes the same thing. We're trying our best to find a very specific standard, and that is a case where you wouldn't have that concern.
So Matthew, today, currently, if you call in, if you're a neighbor and you know that there's a dangerous dog on your street, does that owner get a call or any sort of warning?
The owner of the dog?
Yeah.
Most of the time they get a visit from an animal control officer. We'll talk to them about their dog and talk to them about the issues that their neighbors are having with it, and try to remedy the situation, whether it's containment or trying to make sure that dog doesn't stray off the property.
In your experience, are those dog owners responsive to those conversations?
Some of them are, some of them aren't. It's probably 50-50. And so, oftentimes we have to do repeated visits, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we can catch those dogs off the property and seize them immediately for straying off the property. And then, also cite the owners as well for different issues, including straying from the property, not registering their dog in the county, and even the microchipping, which is to me one of the key components to trying to hold people responsible for their dogs. Because if we can't prove that it's your dog, then how can we hold you responsible for it?
Matt, can I ask a clarifying question? You mentioned having to go to certain individuals because there are persistent calls that come in about these dogs being aggressive and dangerous. But you talked about not being able to confiscate them immediately. Even though there might be video evidence of that, you can't confiscate from their property. But if the dog strays, you could.
Oh, yes.
But
Right away.
I wonder if there's enabling legislation that would allow for you to be able to do that off of their private property, again, if that criteria had been established.
The current bill does have some
It does,
language. So the question is going to be what stays intact. If this makes it through conference committee, what is the final language within the bill? But it does have provisions regarding confiscation. And again, trying to find that balance between respecting someone's property, respecting their ownership of this pet, and also finding a way so that we can kind of create a framework that encourages responsible behavior and potentially provides criminal penalty for someone who's being extremely negligent.
So what happens if that dog strays from the property, animal control gets called in, you happen to pick up the dog, then what happens to the dog?
We impound the dog. The owner has to come to our facility and contact our facility to collect the dog back. There are fees associated with that, whether it's housing of the dog. There's an impound fee. If they didn't register their dog in the county, then there's a registration fee. And then on top of that, if they didn't register their dog, they get a citation for not registering their dog within the county and allowing their dog to stray.
Ashley, when you hear about that, do you feel, you hear from your constituents all the time about this being an issue. Is that not enough?
It is so frustrating. It's not enough. I keep thinking back to constituents that I have calling me, begging me for some kind of recourse, and they're feeling as if the laws are not in their favor. They don't feel protected. They feel like they have to take matters into their own hands, and society shouldn't have to function that way. We should all feel safe.
Yeah, and I can touch on that a little bit. We're both pretty close friends of our county prosecutor, actually. We're all around the same age, right?
Yeah.
Young people in government, or at least I like to still think so, right? But part of that conversation around a fatal attack that happened on our island is Yes, the prosecutor may be able to charge something, but the odds that it holds up in court are very minimal. And also, it would be such a lesser charge that it almost feels insulting to someone's memory. So we're trying to find a way to rebalance that.
I have a couple of comments and questions in regards to unleashed dogs. Corin emailed in saying enforcement of leash laws should be the first line of defense. And then Phil from Kailua is asking, is there an ordinance that says people must pick up after their dogs? Conflicts often arise when dog owners don't pick up after them. What can ordinary citizens do to ensure neighbors pick up after their dogs?
There are leash laws in place, but again, you have to go through the judicial process, and the fines are very minimal. $25, second time $50, third $75. The interesting one that I found was after 3 convictions, it's a $500 fine and up to 100 hours of community service, which I think is something that we should be exploring. And then in terms of picking up after your dog, there is actually a section in our code that requires people to pick up after any animal droppings. And if you're caught not doing so and somebody reports you, there is a citation for that.
You would have to be caught, though.
Yeah.
To get a citation.
But you know what? Everybody's got a phone these days.
Matt, would you suggest if you're a neighbor wanting to get, I guess, proof of this recording if it's, on public property?
Oh yes, I mean, we do appreciate evidence. Simply telling us we sometimes have to catch the owners in the act of doing something improper, whether it's allowing their animal to stray or walking their dog without a leash or any of those. Proof is always something that we definitely appreciate for our agency.
And call it in. I think that is something that I also really want to emphasize is make the call. Build the case. I know it's frustrating, but we need those reports to be filed so that a case can be built.
That's the number one issue really with a lot of these dangerous dogs. People are afraid to come forward. It's a neighbor with a dangerous dog. The owner may be a bit aggressive, and rather than make waves in between the two, the person that suffers in silence basically, without reporting it to animal control or to the police. And so, we'll get these people that may have the dangerous dog and they'll finally call us, but most of them are afraid to actually testify or to present any evidence. And so oftentimes those people with the dangerous dog go off with a warning because there's nobody willing to come forward.
And are these usually cases where people are calling in because the dogs are straying or there's been confrontation issues? Or?
A little bit of both sometimes. Dogs that are just simply straying, those are easy cases, but dogs that are straying and becoming aggressive within the neighborhood, we do need people to come forward for that,
Bob, a former council member from Curtistown, is asking can Chris Todd guarantee a push for this issue in the legislature that will lead to laws and enforcement?
I mean, I can guarantee a push.
Chris is pushing.
We're working on it. Yeah. Hey, Bob. How you doing? Bob knew me when I was a kid, so
Hey,
that's
Bob.
fun. Yeah.
You didn't even need to know his last name. You knew who it was.
The Big Island's a small community, right? But things look very good. I can never guarantee an outcome. We have 76 legislators. You have the governor's administration weighing in, but also the potential of a veto, which I'm not expecting at all. But I will say that relatively smooth sailing so far. I do think that having a single referral to the Judiciary Committee on the House side bodes well. That generally signals that the leadership within the House feels confident in a bill and that it's a good idea, basically. So right now we're in that kind of like penultimate step. We're going to convene for conference committee. It's going to get negotiated out. We have attorneys on both sides that'll kind of fine tune. I'm hoping we can come to an agreement, but things look pretty good. I would say most of the changes made in the House Judiciary Committee were, or actually rather in the Senate, it's mostly just around the margins. So we're in a pretty good place right now, and things look pretty good.
Okay.
Chris, would you say that we should get members of our community to call their legislators, lend support?
Yeah, support is good. It's always good to hear support. Obviously, kind of the nature of government, the nature of our jobs, we hear from folks a lot of times when they're very upset, and a lot of times rightfully so. This is one of those where if you can lend your voice within your community to say, we support this legislation, we support that this is necessary, I think that would go a long way to make sure that it's prioritized. But stay positive, because I think everyone's really trying to find the right outcome here. Everyone's trying to work together and be proactive, and things look pretty good right now.
You know, when your constituents call in to both of you, is it at the point where they have already called police, they have already called animal control or the Humane Society usually, or they come to you first?
It is a mix of all of that. And it is a constant stream. And if they're lucky to get my cell phone number, they start calling me there. And then there's the Facebook messages, and then there are the emails. And I think it's because our office has been so proactive in trying to do something. We've convened a number of partners. Matt has been, part of a number of discussions. And, I give credit to Matt and his team, because last year is when we enacted the ordinance and gave you guys $4.3 million to essentially build the plane and fly. That is what they are doing. They are building an agency from the ground up, but also there's an expectation in community that you deliver all of these services that were historically provided by the Humane Society. And so I think a lot of folks see and know that we're trying, but I want to mobilize them and kind of channel that frustration and good energy in a positive way. And that is, if it's to lend to support to this bill, I want to make sure that we're putting out the kahea to do that.
We have another viewer question. Terry from Honolulu is asking, how do leash laws apply to houseless individuals who keep dogs? And then I was just thinking from this person's question, a follow-up to that, also is, if it's a houseless person's dog, you can't necessarily contain them. So is that an issue as well if those dogs are aggressive?
Yeah, you're the expert. Go for it.
Well, we get a lot of homeless, unfortunately, that they do have dogs, and to be honest, they are very good dog owners most of the time. Whenever we actually get a homeless person's dog, it's usually not because they're aggressive or because they're off leash. It's because they're being hospitalized and the dog has to go somewhere. So a lot of times the police call us to house the dog or to take the dog in. But the leash laws still apply to the homeless as well. And so, yes, those individuals still have to maintain some kind of security on those dogs.
Curious to get your take, all three of you, on this question. At what point should a dog be euthanized? If it kills another human, or if it's just too aggressive and keeps attacking other dogs or others and just in general?
That is such a struggle.
Yeah.
When we had introduced this ordinance to kind of clean up that section about confiscating a dangerous dog, and then touring our facility in Lower Puna, it breaks your heart to see these animals essentially in a box for days on end, not really getting, I think, the emotional support that they need, and so they're deteriorating. And you have to think, is it a salvageable situation? I don't know.
Yeah.
What is really better, more humane for the animal in terms of like the rest of their existence?
Well, and to unring the bell of a dog that is already aggressive, attacks somebody, and has that nature to begin with because it has never had the socialization that it needs. It takes a lot of training to untrain those behaviors. And for an owner that never put the efforts in to begin with, are they going to put the efforts in to untrain those behaviors in the long run? And if not, is that animal safe to go out into the public? That's the question that we ask all the time.
Ashley, this is a question for you. Maybe you can touch on it, or if anyone wants to add to it. Laura from Hilo is asking, what were the consequences, if you know, for the dog owners in the Dolores Oskins case on the Big Island?
To my knowledge, there haven't been any consequences.
Wow. I think that's pretty telling of
It
the
is.
issue and the frustration
Yeah.
for your constituents especially. And then, obviously this has been a serious problem on the Big Island, but also other islands as well.
And it's really life-changing. Like 3 months after Dolores's case, there was a sweet 6-year-old girl, Violet Bead. She and her 2 sisters were walking home from the bus stop in Upper Puna, and a neighbor's dog attacked Violet, 6-year-old, face bitten. She's permanently, partially blind in one eye. And her relationship has changed with animals. She can no longer have her dog. And there's so much psychological trauma and impact that folks that were attacked have to live through, that families have to live through. And it gets to a boiling point now where we don't actually have any laws on the books for there to be justice and accountability.
And I think it's, our responsibility in government, it's kind of twofold, right? Especially when we're dealing with the criminal justice system. It's trying to trying to navigate around the fact that it's not possible to have perfect outcomes. We're never going to be able to prevent all of these attacks. What we want to do is create a framework that people are aware of, which requires some public information campaigns and that sort of thing, that will hopefully permanently change human behavior in a way, right? Knowing that there are these consequences in place, that they must be taken seriously, creating this legal framework that encourages better behavior and discourages and places penalties on really negligent behavior, to hopefully, we know we can't prevent all attacks, but we want to be able to prevent and have this be a measurable decline in aggressive behavior.
Ashley, you brought up that young 6-year-old girl. It was a 6-year-old girl, correct?
She was 6 at the time.
So sad. And then most recently, just a few months ago, there was, I believe he was an 8-year-old boy in Ewa Beach that was attacked by a dog as well. Matthew, is it ever safe for parents to allow kids with somebody else's dog that they don't know? And how would you be able to tell if a dog is safe or potentially, could have that attack instinct in them?
I mean, it's really a matter of whether or not you know that dog owner and that dog individually. Not every dog is necessarily good with kids, and even the dogs that we adopt out of our facilities through our partner organizations, they're heavily evaluated on whether or not they're good with people, good with kids, good with other animals, before we ever let them out of our facility. And so, it's a matter of evaluating that individual that whether or not you know that dog that is in the household, and whether or not they've had any kind of aggressive behavior in the past. Those are questions that you should probably ask before allowing your kid to play with somebody else's dog.
Do you mind also touching on specifics when you mention aggressive behavior? What are some of those signs that people can be on the lookout for?
I mean, dogs can have aggressive behavior for different things. Some dogs can be food aggressive. Some dogs can be, aggressive to anybody that steps within their territory. And so, any of those issues can be separated in their own. A toddler that is playing in the kitchen next to a food bowl where a dog is also eating, that dog, if it has a food aggression, then it can also, potentially go after a child. So.
You just never know, though. I was having a conversation with a colleague, and she was telling me that, some years back, she was a teacher. There were 2 sisters, playing on the street, went to go pet a neighbor's dog. First sister, fine. Second got attacked. And there was really no indication of there being any aggression on the dog side. And so you just never know. So I appreciate the message of caution. I'm thinking about my 7-year-old son, so rambunctious. Every time he sees a dog, he wants to just run up and pet him. And I'm like, honey, you should probably ask permission, because maybe the dog owners aren't, in a position to want you to touch their pet. So please ask permission before you do that. He's gotten better, because there have been some instances where the dogs are trying to nibble at him because they weren't expecting a little 7-year-old to jump on them.
Yeah. That goes back to that, Ashley, you brought this up, the topic of education as well, even for kids, on how to behave around dogs. We have a viewer calling in from Mililani who says, in Mililani, 3 Akitas attacked 2 dogs, 1 almost died. Owner gave money to the other owner of the dog that got hurt. This viewer wants to know what the bill number in the legislature that the panel is talking about. Do you know that offhand?
HB 2058.
Okay, HB 2058.
Yeah. Okay. So if you go on the Capitol website, you can literally just type that in. It'll give you every version of the bill that's existed this session, where it currently sits, which is basically awaiting a final vote in the Senate before it hits conference committee. But usually that final vote in the Senate or the House is more just a formality more than anything. And it'll also let you know when conferees are potentially assigned for conference committee, who you should contact. Because as much as it's good to contact your legislator and all legislators, sure, it's really going to be critical on who's kind of the final negotiators. It'll probably be the House Judiciary Chair and Senate Judiciary Chair, who are kind of the focal point for the legislation. But please, stay involved and be as positive as possible. Right?
Does it help for people to call in and give their testimony?
So in conference committee, it's not so much about testimony as it is in other hearings. This has really been vetted out that way. So instead of that formal process of providing testimony, feel free to email or call these offices, and you can share kind of your thoughts that way. It could be specific provisions that you either believe in or don't believe in. At this stage, it is difficult to add provisions because we just have regulations on ourselves that don't really allow us to do that. But please, share your thoughts going forward.
Do you mind one more time repeating bill number and also that website that people can look
it's
up?
at it's HB 2058, right? Okay,
Yes.
got it. And it's capital.hawaii.gov.
Perfect. Just want to make sure any viewers watching know where they can look that up and get more information. Paul from Honolulu is asking, are dog tags required to be on the dog at all times? Is that something any of you know the answer to?
I don't believe so.
No.
Right?
Yeah, most of the time when an owner has a pet on the property, it's you don't necessarily have to have that collar and tag on, but anytime that dog is off the property, you should have that dog with its collar and its tag on it. Yeah.
Matthew, is there anything that you would suggest for people to do if there is a potentially dangerous dog on their street? Should they start having conversations with that neighbor, or should they, go straight to calling HPD as an example? I
mean, I always tell people, if you can approach the owner of the dog, oftentimes they may not even be aware that their dog. We have one currently that he swears his dog never strays from his property, but I happen to live on the street and I know the dog strays from the property. So sometimes the owners aren't even aware of it, and so.
Did you tell him?
We have actually. I've sent my officers out there to address the issue and make sure that he's aware that his dogs are straying, because it's up to the dog's owner to make sure, but ultimately, a neighborhood, and I tell this to the neighborhood watch groups, you can do it as a group, you can do it as an individual. Sometimes dog owners, when they see multiple people from within their neighborhood all saying the same things about their dog, peer pressure is a big thing. It's the ones that really don't care that will probably not respond very well to that. But in those instances, you should get the police involved or animal control.
Can you maybe share specific examples where there was an instance and then maybe the owner did take the proper precautions or the proper follow-ups afterwards?
Oh, we've had several. We had one owner that couldn't afford proper restraints for their dog, and so we provided food for that month for the dog if he would go and get leashes for his dog. And so sometimes it's a matter of providing education. There are organizations out there that will provide food if you need to for your pets. But ultimately, if you buy a dog, you own a dog, you should have the proper housing, proper restraint, and proper feeding for that dog to be able to own it. If you're going to take on that responsibility, you take it on for a very long time, and never take on a dog ownership without being aware that it is a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Not just to the dog, but to the community around you.
I have a little tiny fluffy dog, and he is a big responsibility. Yeah, all pets are a big responsibility.
I was curious, Matt, what percentage of dogs that are confiscated or actually get dropped off to your facilities, how many of them are not microchipped?
Oh, I would say probably less than 10% of the dogs that we confiscate and bring into our facilities are registered or microchipped within the county.
Less than 10%?
Less than 10%.
So this represents a huge opportunity to, I think, bring community together, to do the behavior trainings, to get them registered, to get them microchipped. And I always have a number of community members that are just chomping at the bit to figure out how they can be helpful in these situations. So is it possible for us to maybe invest in some scanners so that community partners like Neighborhood Watch folks, if there is a loose animal on their street and it's not aggressive, they can approach, they can potentially scan the animal and be a resource to you, holds the animal temporarily while your animal control officers are able to come by?
I believe scanners are something that we could utilize. It's all a matter of who to issue those to. Oftentimes, those individual communities, like within our county, have they do have neighborhood watch groups. They also have community officers that are assigned to those individual communities that are county employees that could potentially have those scanners as well. You know, scanners aren't cheap and they're not indestructible. As I often tell my officers, you got to be careful with these things because they are very breakable. So
Expensive
it's
equipment.
very expensive equipment. So.
Talking about registering your dogs, this is not a question, but a caller from Kaneohe had a comment saying liability for an attack needs to extend to anybody that is walking or handling the dog. Many owners will not register the dog to avoid responsibility for their dog's actions. Do you think or find that to be true?
I mean, to a certain degree, there is that idea that if a dog isn't registered to you, it's not necessarily your responsibility if it does attack somebody. But ultimately, if a dog is on a person's property for over 30 days, it's considered property of that person that houses it. So
Even if it's microchipped?
Even if it's not microchipped.
Even if it's not microchipped.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the challenge, for us and for people in courts even are how do you create a drawback to that person saying that yes, this dog is yours without them being microchipped or registered.
Vince is writing in saying, years ago I was a meter reader on the mainland and I had to go in backyards to check often. I encountered many dogs and to me the most aggressive and dangerous were pit bulls. Has there ever been the thought of banning that breed? I'm not entirely sure what Vince means by banning the breed. Do you find that to be true about the pit bull breed? I know this is a very controversial topic because I know many people that have very friendly, nice, well-trained pit bulls. I do want to put that out there.
It's a very slippery slope to ban one dog over another. To be honest, the worst attack that I've ever had in the veterinary industry was from a basset hound that attacked me in a clinic one time. And so, you can never really tell. Sometimes it's not necessarily the breed, it's the owner's training or lack thereof that has caused these animals to go that way. So pit bulls are seen as a very tough man's type of dog. Oftentimes, if you treat them as such, then they will start to exhibit the behaviors that are undesirable. But I've seen all sorts of breeds from one end of the spectrum to the other be aggressive. In fact, one of the most aggressive dogs that is well documented, one of the most aggressive dogs is a Chihuahua.
I believe it. I know a couple of people who have aggressive Chihuahuas. You touched on this a little bit earlier. I think you're talking about being the owner's responsibility, and I think you just mentioned about how you treat the dog is how their behavior is going to come out. Is that often the case where owners are aggressive to their dogs and then in turn that dog is also aggressive?
It does. I mean, being aggressive towards a dog and, showing abuse to the dog, those kind of behaviors creates a timid dog to you, to the owner. But to everybody else, it creates a dog that can potentially be aggressive to them. So a dog that has an aggressive owner oftentimes can exhibit those same behaviors onto other things, animals, and people that are around them. So yeah, it is ultimately the owner's responsibility.
We have just 2 minutes left. Ashley, Chris, anything you want to say to your constituents who I know are so frustrated about this issue? Ashley, I'll let you go first.
I think you have people here in this room, part of this conversation, that really, truly do care And even folks that are not here, think about our prosecuting attorney's office, police department. They care, they want to work with community. We are so hopeful with the legislation that is moving forward on the state side, and just really look forward to continuing to support Matt and his team and all of the great work that they're doing. And I think we have some really great ideas that came out of today's conversation, where we can be really embracing community as a partner to ensure that animals are properly cared for, but at the end of the day, our community is safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of extend that, and I think a lot of times at the legislature things can be really frustrating. I think this is a very rare case. Fingers crossed that this gets through of something that really just like kind of the first crack at it. There's a lot of momentum, a lot of community support, a lot of very key community testimony coming in from people who've been personally impacted. We have legislators in the area who've kind of come together, particularly Rep. Ilagan, who's introduced the bill from the Puna side. Things are going pretty well, and I would encourage everyone to just get as involved as possible to get this past the finish line.
Just a couple of seconds, what would you say to dog owners out there?
I would say make sure that you treat your dog as if it is a member of your family. Take care of it and make sure that you train it properly. Register your dog within your county and make sure that you microchip it. It helps us in so many ways, especially from animal control side. If you happen to lose your dog, it goes back to you right away.
Yep. You know what? We're all Ohana. We're all family. We have to treat our pets like that, so they can in turn treat everybody else, our neighbors, like family as well. Mahalo to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate all your insights, and then also, of course, to our viewers for tuning in and asking those questions. We had Representative Chris Todd here in studio, Councilmember Ashley Kirkowicz, and Matthew Runnels. Next week, more attempts to tackle Hawaii's housing crunch are being considered at the state legislature. We'll talk about the new and controversial ideas on the table. Please join us then. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaii are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive difference in the communities where we